Hi everyone, Kenny here with Barbque and the Stoker power draft system. In our last video we showed you how to set up your stoker for your first cook, and today we'll continue that and we'll show you how to set up your cooker for your first cook. We'll show you how to stack charcoal correctly and show you how to place your pit probe in order to use your stoker on your cooker for your first cook. So now here we are, we got our 22-inch WSM. We took the top off so we can show you how to load the charcoal. We got lump charcoal here. We're using lump charcoal because we're going to show you how to stack it. If you're using briquettes, they might have a little bit more ash, so you might need to clean out the ash every so often. If you're using lump, you shouldn't have that issue. And we'll talk a little bit about center burns and side burns and show you how to stack it so you don't get those burns, which will cause large fluctuations in your cooker. And we also have some hickory, which will mix into the charcoal for a nice, good, long smoke. So now what I started to do is I started to stack the charcoal. You want to put your biggest pieces on the bottom and kind of stack them so that they're touching each other, and you try and minimize the air gaps. You get those center and side burns because there will be large air pockets which will cause the burn to go either center or the side. So what you want to do is you want to keep stacking until you get a nice even layer, as even as you can, with all your big pieces. And then you're going to load your smoking woods and mix that in with your charcoal, and then use smaller pieces as you go through the loading. So now we got our first layer of the bigger stuff, and now we're ready to top it off a little bit with some more charcoal. And then we'll go ahead and put a couple of pieces of hickory, nice square pieces. Put them around in a circle, make sure they're kind of evenly distributed, and then we'll go ahead and top it off with more charcoal. So now we got most of our charcoal loaded up here in the WSM, and what we're going to do is top it off and then top it off with some more hickory. So we'll go ahead and make a mound in the middle. Just make sure it's nice and evenly distributed. Make sure that it's kind of got a point to it. And we'll go ahead and top it off with some more hickory. Just go ahead and place it around in a big circle. Make sure that if you make sure that it's stacked like this, you'll get that nice even burn, and you won't get those center burns or side burns, which can cause those temperature fluctuations. So now we'll talk a little bit about starting a fire. We got all our charcoal set up and our hickory loaded. There's a couple different ways to start a fire. Some people use torches. The main thing you want to watch out for is make sure that there's not too much charcoal lit, otherwise you'll cause large overshoots when the blower's blowing. Another method is to use a chimney starter. If you use a chimney, make sure you only use about a quarter of a chimney lit. If you use more than that, you might have a large overshoot and it'll take a while to stabilize. We use these fire blocks charcoal starters. They seem to work real well. They go out real quick. We use 3 of them, and what we do is we place them in a triangle around the cooker, and then we light them and wait for them to go out. Then we go ahead and put the middle on and the top on. So now our charcoal starters have gone out. We put on the middle and the lid, and now we'll talk a little bit about probe placement. Usually we use sensor grommets, but today we'll just show you how to put it on the grate without the sensor grommets. We'll show you how to use sensor grommets, how to install them, and insert the probes in another video. So the first thing you want to do is go ahead and take your pit probe, and you have your pit sensor clip. It's really easy to install. It just goes into this hole and slips right over the silicone strain relief. So we'll go ahead and put that together, and it'll just sit like that on the grate. We'll go ahead and remove the grate so we can install the pit probe. The stoker's not on yet. The cooker's still being brought up to temp by the vents that are open on the bottom after we started the cooker. One thing we want to point out that's important is, especially on these WSMs, is this daisy wheel. We have it only open about a quarter. If you have it open more than that, it'll cause somewhat of an air leak. more air will be pulled through the bottom where the blower is, and it'll cause large overshoots. So we'll go ahead and remove the lid. And now with probe placement, you want to make sure that it's not going to be touching any of your meat, and that it's not going to be touching any part of your cooker or the grate itself. So what you want to do is just pick a spot on your grate that's not directly over the fire, and make sure that it's somewhat indirect, and then make sure that juices aren't going to be dripped on it, and then it's not going to be touching any other pieces of meat. So we usually put ours right about here in the center, off to the left hand side, that way that it gets a good temperature measurement of the air around it. Since we have the bowl inside, it's foiled, and then it makes sure that it gets a good ambient temperature reading of the cooker rather than touching the meat or the grate itself. Now we'll go ahead and put the lid back on, and once we put the lid back on, the stoker's ready to be turned on to bring the temperature up to the cooker up to the proper temperature. So now you put your lid on and you put your temperature probe in. Go ahead and power up your stoker and let it bring the cooker up to temperature the rest of the way. It might take a half hour to an hour to stabilize the temperatures depending on what type of cooker. And again, like our previous video, make sure it passes the self-test and make sure all the lights go off before you're ready to let it go and catch some sleep.